that. Hey, dreamers, welcome to the Dream Stream podcast. I am your host, Yiskah Koock, here today with fellow dream worker and friend, Brendan Merritt.
Hello all.
How are you doing, Brendan?
Doing okay. Dream life has been very much more active since last time we have spoken.
That's what you had written, and I think that's wonderful. So you're dreaming again, remembering your dreams and recording them, I assume, or writing them down.
Yeah, somebody needs to crack the whip there.
Okay.
I'm the only one.
So I want to talk about lucid dreaming today because I'm fascinated by the topic. And coming home from Thanksgiving dinner, my 11-year-old said, "Oh, when you lucid dream, you don't choose everything. You just are put in the position to make decisions. And then you make those decisions." And then my 24-year-old chimed in and he said, "Yes, exactly." And I was like, wow, my boys know about lucid dreaming, which is not that much of a surprise. I mean, they know I'm into dreams. I've always been since before they came into this world. But my 24-year-old said, he was like, "Yeah, that's how I experience it." And exactly how they described it is how I experience it. So my 24-year-old said, "It's less that you make all the decisions, rather you're presented with situations and lucidly make the decisions." So, and I very much experience it similarly, that I'm not choosing the setting. I mean, there's still, what did Dr. Stephen Larson always say? The dream conductor or whatever is still making the decisions, but I find myself in the middle of it, choosing the situation to find myself in. So I'd love to share a lucid dream that I can kind of point this out.
That'd be great.
So there is a wonderful Buddhist teacher from the Bon tradition named Bon, B-O-N, named Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche. And he's an author and a teacher. And he wrote a book called The Tibetan Yogas of Dream and Sleep. And I went to see him talk twice. The first time at the Open Center in the city, and the second time at Omega in Rhinebeck. And he's so lovely. So he was telling his students, us, the participants, about what we can choose to do when we lucid dream. So he was saying, you can change gender, and he was saying, you can be an animal. And he just had different suggestions. And the last night of the workshop, I had the most exquisite lucid dream, but then nobody was still around to share it with, least of all the teacher. It was the end of the workshop. So I had to kind of hold it close. So I didn't have anyone to share it with from that setting. So here's my dream. I used to live on County Route 2 in Accord, New York, mid-Hudson Valley. And I had a dream that I am driving down the road. It's a very windy road. I'm driving down the road and I smash into a car on the side of the road. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but it was like a hit and run. I didn't do anything about it. I was like, uh-oh. And then I'm driving further. And again, I collide with a parked car. And the next thing I know, there's a police car behind me with their sirens on. And I say to myself, man, this better be a dream, because if not, I'm in big trouble. And if it is, if it is a dream, I'm getting out of here, and that popped me right into lucidity. So the first thing I did was I flew I was in the car. I flew myself in the car onto
You
a big,
flew?
I flew. I had
Right.
to get out of there. My car
Of
flew.
course. Okay. That's pretty cool.
The fuzz was after me. So I landed at a farm. It almost looked like that farm, the big red barn when you go up Mohonk to come down into New Paltz. There's a big red barn. Anyway, maybe you'll notice it's almost like that. And then I got out of the car and I said, I will need my horse. And then the next thing I know, a beautiful Palomino, my dream horse, comes out from behind the barn, and I get on it. And then things were kind of funny with my gender. First I was a woman, I was myself, and when I flew in the car to the farm. But I think when I get on the horse, then I become a man, and I have a big lance under my arm. And the next thing I know, I'm in a village along a big lake. And there's all these different cottages where people live. And somehow I know that they have to, there's a dragon that lives there, and they have to sacrifice a virgin, a maiden, to the dragon regularly. And everybody's very upset about this. So the next thing I know, I'm like looking down at the village. The next thing I know, there's a big dragon coming out of the lake. So it has a little bit of the Nessie, Loch Ness monster. And the big dragon is coming out of the lake and just its head. And I'm on my horse, on my steed, and I have my lance. And the first thing I say is, oh no, what if I'm not strong enough, to kill it? And then, excuse me. And then I think, well, I really don't want to hurt anything, And the next thing, what's that?
Not even a dragon.
Just in that one moment. and then the next thing I say is, I'm going for it. And my horse starts galloping towards the lake's edge. And I have my lance, and I go forward with the lance, and I hit the dragon right in the third eye, and it collapses and it dies. And then all the townspeople start pouring out of their homes, very thrilled that I've done this. They don't want to sacrifice any more of their daughters. And so I think I said, at this point, I'm a man. And so then they're going to give me the maiden who is going to be sacrificed. She can now be my wife, and in that moment, I pop back into being a woman, and I'm like, wait a minute, and I say, I am the hero, I'll take the prize. And then I come back into my male self, and they hand me this beautiful maiden. And so I was thinking, my two sons, how they explained lucid dreaming is very much how I experienced it. I didn't choose the setting, or I didn't consciously choose the setting. It's obviously somewhere in my unconscious. And but I made the decisions within the situations I was presented with. So I made the decision to go after the dragon, and I made the decision for my dream horse to come to me. And I made the decision prior to that of flying my car out of there. So even though I didn't consciously, again, I'm sure it was in my unconscious mind, I didn't choose to bang into cars and a cop would be following me, and I would, I didn't choose any of that, or even the village on the lake. And it looked like a little European village, like stone houses, like cottages. Everybody lived in a cottage. And so, and again, I say, I am the hero. I will take the prize. And then I went back into being a man. So, and that was the dream that I dreamed at the end of my workshop. with Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, and I wasn't able to share it with any of the people I was learning with. So, but it was so super exciting. And I think we've spoken about, Brendan, how lucid dreams are very elusive, you know?
Yeah, that's the one thing that I find really compelling about them is that the clarity of them.
Yes.
And like I often dream in color, and I've heard that some people never dream in color. So
Wow.
that in of itself isn't enough of a like indication for me. It more has to do with it's almost hyper real. Like it's
Oh,
not just real, but there's like an uh, almost like pumped up version of reality. Like everything
yes.
has like an inner luminescence almost.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Definitely. Yeah. And I believe our dream teacher, Robert Moss, had said, when you dream in black and white, it's almost like a documentary film. So it could be telling us something from the past or something from the future. But when we dream in color, it's more like life.
Yeah, so I guess black and white is more like day residue kind of dream.
Oh, possibly. Yeah, right. So, and it's, it's more like news oriented or something. I don't know. But Brendan, will you share a lucid dream with us?
I wanted to comment on your dream a little
Oh,
first because
thank you.
there were just a few things that popped in my head. The one thing is, kind of on the humorous side. Have you ever seen Mel Brooks's film, The History of the World?
I'm sure I did. I love Mel Brooks.
There's this running joke in the film, and I think they end it like this, but there is this horse named Miracle. He's like
Oh,
this bright
yes.
white stallion,
Yes.
and they're like in a real pickle at some point in the movie when they're surrounded by Roman guards or whatever, and they're like,
Right.
"We're going to need a miracle if we're going to get out of this." And then
Ah.
all the horse whinnies, and
Oh,
the camera turns, and there's Miracle, and they're like, "Miracle!"
I
Like
love it. I love
it
it.
just reminded me of that.
I remember we are the Knights of Ni. Is that also a
Oh,
history of
that's a totally different film.
but it's
That's
also Mel Brooks,
Monty
yeah.
Python. Nope,
No, it's Monty Python. Yes. Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, the Knights of Ni are in the Holy Grail.
Okay.
But getting back to just the whole. I mean, you've got a couple of things that are interesting to me going on there. It's almost like, well, Dr. Freud and Dr. Jung, we were expecting you.
Yes.
Because you've got like this whole archetypal like thing happening between the car and the horse. They're both modes of transportation.
Yes.
Um, and some people might say that they're typically representative of masculine traits. And it's interesting that when you're on the horse, you become a male knight carrying a
Yes.
lance.
Yes.
How epiphallic can you get?
I know.
And you got
Epiphallic,
like
is that what you
classic,
said?
huh?
Epiphallic,
Iptiphallic.
epic and phallic.
Iptiphallic. It's a word denoting something that's symbolic of a phallus. There's a couple of Roman deities that are always
Okay.
portrayed with erect phalluses, and they refer to them as iptiphallic
Okay.
deities. When Pan is often and
Yes.
Sylvanus are both often represented that way. But there's gods even in Egyptian mythology that are like that.
Yes.
But
Huh.
the other thing that I flashed on, there's a movie called Dragon Slayer that was a really beautiful film. And there's almost a reversal there because in that movie, there is a young hero who's a wizard's apprentice. He's not a knight. But when he's on his way to the village, there's a young page with them who it's revealed is actually a woman disguised as a boy.
Oh,
Because her
oh,
father is trying to preserve her from being sacrificed to the dragon. Um,
okay.
So there's
it's very mythic scene.
yeah.
You know, the
The sexual elements are kind of interesting though too, because like typically, I think Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell both equate the dragon or the serpentine forms with feminine
okay,
energy, with like
interesting.
chthonic underworld forces that are
Yes.
kind of like devouring and,
Yes.
um,
Women are fierce.
well, aspects of women are
Yeah.
fierce. I mean, it's
Or I
not
should
that
say the
women are not
feminine,
fierce,
not women, but the
but
feminine.
yeah, aspects of the feminine. Lilith is a good representation of
Yes,
that in
absolutely.
Judaism. Um, and the lake itself,
Yeah.
in mythology, dragons are almost always associated with bodies of water. Um,
Really?
is also, oh yeah, they're, if you read just the book, The Flight of the Dragons, which is kind of whimsical in some ways, but he goes into the history of the mythology around dragons, and they're often referred to as lake monsters. Um,
Really? Oh, I did not know that.
the
I
worm
thought
of,
I was crossing mythological animals like Loch Ness monster, who is in the
yeah, no,
water, with the dragon, who I would think would be in the sky.
trying to remember the name of it, but they touch on the story in the movie Lair of the White Worm that was written by Bram Stoker.
Huh.
There's a worm, aka a dragon, that
Oh.
starts out being a funny old fish that somebody accidentally catches on their hook. And
Oh.
they're like, oh, what is this thing? And they throw it into the well. And
Oh.
it just gets bigger and bigger, starts, eating frogs or whatever, and eventually gets big enough to come out and start eating lambs and villagers. And the
Okay.
giant comes and gets him or her or whatever it is.
Right. Right.
Grendel's
Yes.
mother is another feminine, water monster who is the mother of a strange monster, but there's also confusion about whether or not she might be a dragon herself. Um,
Ah.
so it's convoluted when you get into it. So you
Yes.
have like this chthonic feminine force being confronted by an iptophalic, almost solar male form um,
Yes.
coming
Being the
after it.
knight with the lance.
Yeah. Then you
Yes.
get presented with the virgin, you know, as the
Yes.
prize, you know,
Yes.
and what's the interesting part is that you're actually female, and reveal that at some
Yes.
point by returning to your normal form. Was that a
Right.
conscious choice you made in the dream to
I
turn back into a
No, that
female?
was not a conscious choice. All of a sudden I was back as a female, and I was like, no, no, no. I am the hero. And in my dream, that was the male, and I will take the prize. Because, so then I switched back to a male, and I took the lovely maiden.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what some of the implications are behind that kind of a dream, but it's interesting to me from like just a historical viewpoint that it seems to almost be like the classic battle between like the solar male deity and the
Yes.
chthonic underworld, dragon water creature. Uh,
Yes.
Tiamat is also, even the oldest story that we have as a written story, is kind of considered a water monster as well.
Huh.
So it's referred to as a dragon.
Yes.
Some interpretations, and that's Babylon and Sumeria. So that's a
Okay.
theme that's incredibly old, um, and fascinating in a lot of ways.
Yes. Well, and I think Michael, the story goes, I used to be a Waldorf teacher. So Michael just holds the dragon at bay. But King George, or I
Oh
don't,
no, yeah, Saint George,
St.
and
George
talking
actually
about the English version of the story.
kills the dragon,
Yeah,
but
there's a
not
lot of art
Michael.
depictions of Archangel Michael holding the dragon at bay, and
Yes.
that's when they started more demonizing the symbol of the dragon and made it into just a
Oh,
symbol of the devil. At some
right.
point, Christianity, they you know explicitly identified the dragon as somehow equated it with the devil specifically.
Wow.
Um, and I don't, I'm kind of curious. I gotta actually at some point go back and find the story of Saint George, because
Yes.
Saint George, prior to being a saint, I'm not sure whether or not there was a dragon in the original story or not, or whether that's
Oh,
something that got layered into it. But there are lots of really interesting stories dotted around England in particular of knights confronting dragons, like the one I was talking about with the worm. Um,
yes.
Tolkien did a really funny short story.
Smog the dragon.
Well, even outside of that, he wrote a short story
Yeah.
called The Smith of Wootton Major,
Huh.
which is about a young smith, blacksmith, who ends up going to become a dragon slayer. And it's very
Wow.
whimsical, the whole thing, but it's a spin-off on those kind of stories. It's definitely
Yes.
a read if you can find it.
Yeah, I would love to read more on this. It's so fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny that you brought up dragons at all today, because I was having a conversation online with a good friend of mine who was just talking about the symbol of Medusa.
Yes.
Um,
Well,
which,
that's who's behind you.
yeah,
Yeah,
actually is
Medusa.
behind me.
Is that Medusa?
Um, yeah, I think it is actually.
With
It's
well,
yeah, with
it's
Perseus like
he's on her
climbing
head.
on top of her, something like that. But
Yeah.
I don't remember where this painting is from. I've had this background for a while.
Yes.
Um, but she was basically, talking about alternative interpretations of the myth. And again, it's another kind of classic male versus female story, because the story around Medusa is that she gets raped by Poseidon,
Okay.
and then, because she tries to distance herself from the whole situation,
Yes.
Athena decides to punish her and turn
Oh,
her into this creature with serpents for hair,
wow.
that turns people to stone. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
Interesting.
In some versions
Yeah.
of the story, she's got a serpentine body as well.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah. Poseidon is a water deity, though, too. So there we are
Okay.
again, water. And, in the Jungian world, the water tends to represent the unconscious mind,
Yes.
or the
Or
subconscious.
also the
Yep.
emotional depths.
And, can also represent the underworld,
Yes.
which in fairy mythology around Britain, um, lakes and bodies of water are sometimes gateways to the other world, or, it's
Wow.
seen as like fairyland is
The
some
lady of the lake.
water. Yep.
She rises out of the lake
Out of the lake.
with a sword. Is that the same sword that King Arthur is able to pull out of the stone?
It's supposed to be a different sword, because
Yeah.
the stories are told separately from one another.
Okay.
There's even some versions of the story where Arthur's sister, Morgan Le Fay,
Yes,
um,
Margane.
makes him a garter or a belt for the sword, and the
Okay.
scabbard is what
Oh, yes.
prevents him from being harmed. It
Okay.
actually protects him from any wounds. And there are even versions of the story where that scabbard or that belt or garter is given to Gawain when he
Yes.
goes to confront the Green Knight.
Oh, yes.
And the whole
Wow.
thing about that is that he has to reveal the secret of it and give it up in order to really face the challenge. In other words, face death, because
Right.
without that, he's vulnerable and can be killed.
Wow. Well, I was just thinking of Gawain. and the story of the woman who also looks like a witch. He has to marry her, and then in the night when they're about to consummate, or that's, you know, going to be happening, she turns into a beautiful princess, and she gives him the choice. I can either be a beautiful princess at night or during the day, so your friends can see that I'm beautiful, and then at night I would be more witchy. And he says to her, I can't make that choice for you. You need to make that choice. And because that was his response, she becomes a beautiful queen or princess, both in the day and in the night. So
Right.
I guess because he gives her the autonomy to make the choice herself.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a resolution of opposites, and that story is even older than the version that has Gawain in it, because
Oh,
it's
really?
originally a Celtic tale of three brothers, and
Oh,
the first two brothers fail the test. The third one, who's considered, kind of young simpleton or whatever, kind-hearted, he passes a couple of other challenges before he meets the hag, and
okay.
he, basically is given the choice of, well, you can have me as a hag or you can have me as a beautiful woman, and
Yes.
which one will it be? And he makes the right choice by giving
Yes.
her her own sovereignty.
Yes. 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 I love that. Well,
But
thank
back
you.
to,
Thank you, Dreamworker.
yeah, back to the whole lucid dreaming bit, though. It's interesting that you guys all agree, and I agree too, that generally when I've had a lucid dream, I'm presented with a situation.
Yes.
Like, and then at some point there's like a shift and my consciousness, and I'm like, oh wait, this is a
Yes.
dream. I have some choices here on
Yes.
how to play this out. And
Exactly.
it's never been like a full-blown, I'm going to enter into a dream and do this. It's always
Right.
like you're teleported to whatever spot,
Yes.
or situation, and suddenly something clicks and you're like, oh wait, this is a lucid dream.
This cannot possibly be happening.
Yeah, and can't really like control everything in the environment,
Right.
but you have more control than you would in a dream where you're just the viewer. And I think that that's interesting what you were saying earlier about like color versus black and white, and
Yes.
contrasting that even with the hyper reality of a lucid dream, um, takes it one layer deeper, because suddenly
Mm,
you have possibilities. You're not a passive viewer like you are in the black and white dream,
right. It's very
and you're
true.
not, just having an experiential thing going on as you would in a normal color dream, but you have choices. And
Yes.
how do I deal with this? And you can even say to yourself at some points, and I've done this in some dreams, is this is a dream. I don't want to, I need to do stuff today. I need to wake up, and suck yourself out of it and,
Yes.
get
Yes.
back and do like a normal waking consciousness.
Yes.
But yeah, let me think about what I would want to share.
Okay.
Um, there's one dream that keeps coming back to me. That was one I brought up, I think, during one of Dr. Larson's dream groups years ago. That was definitely a lucid dream.
Hmm.
Me, where again I was suddenly in some kind of fairyland,
Okay.
medieval, classic fairy tale kind of scenario,
Yes.
and I think I don't even remember who it is, but I'm presented with this quest,
Yes.
and I'm given a sword, and I'm said that I need to go find the true fairy cross.
Hmm.
In reality, fairy crosses are these little stones that they naturally form crystals that are shaped in a cross form. Um, but this was the true fairy cross, whatever that.
Okay.
And yeah, so there was some interesting. elements of that one where I could actively like engage, almost like a choose your own adventure.
Exactly. Exactly. Do you know those books? Those books
Oh
helped
yeah.
me so much as a kid. I was reading those and I was so fascinated. I felt like I was learning all about free choice and destiny or whatever. And I got to the point where I, make my choices and turn to the page number. I got to the point where I had to know what happens with every choice. So I went back again and I would look if I went the other way, and I needed to unpack that whole scenario.
Yeah, I think role-playing games are really great for that sort of thing. That was kind of how I got to choose your own adventure books through
Okay.
the back door of Dungeons and Dragons,
Okay.
because they started making choose your own adventure Dungeons and Dragons books uh,
Oh,
after the game got popular.
yes.
And, it was a way that you could have some interactivity going on. And they eventually brought that into the computer world, with there were games like Myst, where
Okay.
you had like choices or you had to answer questions.
Yes.
You're going through this quasi mythological, like weird astral, I don't know, etheric world that's definitely not our world
Yes.
process. But how
Yes.
the story played out was entirely based on what choices you made
Yes.
during the game.
That is so much like lucid dreaming. That's incredibly like lucid dreaming. I was sort of knocked off my feet. I mean, I was sitting in the car, but when I heard my younger boy and my older son totally agreeing, and they both knew. And I was like, that is exactly how I see it as well. And kind of blew me away. That's why I very much wanted to visit this topic in a Dream Stream podcast.
Yeah, I'd really be curious to talk to somebody who was very into Carlos Castaneda's work, because
Yes.
he's an author who has been very influential in bringing the idea of lucid dreaming into mainstream Western consciousness.
Right.
And I believe that I'm trying to remember the name of the shaman in the
Don Juan.
Don Juan. That's right. I think he instructs Carlos that in order to enter into a dream like that, you need to make a conscious choice and look at your hands.
Exactly. Exactly. Look at your
That was the
hands.
trigger, which makes perfect sense when you think about, what do we use to manipulate the world around us? Your hands.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
And the hand is almost like a little macrocosm, because, you think of the 5 points of the hand
Yes.
being like, if you that famous painting by Da Vinci
Yes. Almost
with
like a star.
pentacle,
Yes.
where the head and the arms and the legs form the
Yes.
5 points.
Wow. I love it.
As above, so below.
As above, so below. I love that. So yeah, I never was able to go into lucidity by looking at my hands, but I know about that because I read some Castaneda, but that hasn't been a thing that worked for me. But maybe, I mean, I'm always open.
Yeah, I've
to,
tried it, I think, and I think I've had marked limited success, but
okay.
I haven't been doing it recently. I've got a book on lucid dreaming. I'll have to dig out and share
Yes.
the author with you, so you can also share it with the viewers.
Yes.
It was like sort of a how-to guide, uh,
Okay.
with examples from, I guess, different people who have been subjected to, interviews or whatever about the process.
Yes. I'd be very interested. There's another lucid dreaming book that I have, and unfortunately I also can't think of the author, but he has a lot of world's art of different paintings where the woman who's lying down and dreaming, I think there's a lion around her. Like this is something that many cultures practiced over
She's just
the,
lying around, huh?
yes. So I'll
Yeah,
also
no, I mean,
put,
I think
yeah.
like a lot of character. It's interesting that you attended a class on dreaming with someone from the Bon tradition, because
Yes.
Bon tradition, is connected to Tibetan Buddhism, but it has its roots in, what anthropologists refer to as shamanic practices. And the Bon
Really?
people are very, very, extremely shamanic, um,
Yes.
very much into achieving trance states and dream work. And, you know,
Wonderful.
a lot of the, mythological beasties that show up in Tibetan
Yes.
Buddhism have their roots in Bon shamanism.
Really
Yeah.
interesting. So interesting.
That's
So,
one of the
yeah.
main things that differentiates that form of Buddhism from, the Mahayana greater path form.
Okay.
It's considered the Hinayana, meaning it's a lesser path.
Okay.
Lesser to whom, I don't know, but I mean, because it's not focused so much on achieving salvation through the Buddha as much as
Okay.
it is like you kind of got to work your own way through it by going through all these trials.
Yes.
You know,
Interesting.
yeah,
The first time I met Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, as I said, it was at the Open Center in New York City. And I had just dreamed, prior to this workshop, that I was sitting at I am sitting at a round table. And I don't know, I think it's already on the table. I don't think somebody brings it, but sitting on the table is a plate with different stones on it. And I pick up the turquoise one and I bite into it and I eat it. And I still remember its taste. I mean, it wasn't the best tasting as a
what
stone. It wasn't the best tasting turquoise. But so
you
after
should have
this,
stuck your finger in the bottom of it like people do with the chocolates, and
oh, it's taste all of them. So
it's
and I
filling.
yeah, it had a filling. Yeah, it was like the
Really?
chocolates.
Okay.
And so I went to the first time I met Wangyal Rinpoche, and I had such a turquoise stone, the one that I was in my dream. And I went up to meet him and I presented it to him because I felt like it was just prior to me doing this adventure with Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche and then the lucid dreaming. It felt very significant. So I went to give it to him and he was so humble. And he said, no, don't give it to me. You keep this. And he said, but I will bless it. And so he took it in his hands and he put a blessing on it. And then he handed it back to me.
That's lovely.
It was so awesome.
Do you still have the stone?
I, I might. I think I do, but I'm not sure that I do.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if you could use that as a trigger for a
Oh, what a
lucid
good
dream.
idea. Okay. Put it under my pillow. I'll
Yeah,
give
yeah,
give it a go.
or consciously try to bring it into mind when you're entering that liminal state between waking
Yes.
and dreaming.
I'm always so busy with my prayer practice in that liminal space that I think I shared with you that I built a prayer cathedral in my
Oh, right.
imagination.
Yep.
And different things, I'm constantly building it. I'm constantly building this. And different things are changing, such as when I start, I sort of am in Colorado dry wildflower field, a field of all wildflowers, and it smells like pine. It's like so dry there. And
Fresh.
and I did what I think you were suggesting, put my feet in the water of the stream, right? That was from
Yeah.
you. And also listening, to the stream. And yeah, so it keeps changing and evolving, constantly building. So, I mean, but sometimes I'm awake enough to do my whole meditation and then still not asleep. So maybe that would be the time to incubate a dream,
Yeah.
which is to say to ask for
Right.
the lucid
Kind of
dream.
like
Or
making bed. You have to let it rise before you can knead it,
Right.
put it in the oven again.
Oh, I like that.
I guess you
Yes.
could liken it to an alchemical process in that regard.
Yes. Yes. So I have one other that came to mind. I think I've had more than two. I mean, again, it's elusive, and I'm not practiced in incurring lucid dreams, but my other one, I was still living in my little farmhouse in Accord at the time with these little windows in my bedroom. And there was these wonderful maple trees outside my bedroom. And they were separated from each other, but then their branches were touching each other. So I always felt like, there was some magic there. And
Did they make noise when they did that?
possibly, I'm not sure.
I don't
And
remember.
like on a windy day, maybe. So I dreamed that I was sitting in my bed on the inside of my window. And I think it was Reb Zalman Schachter Shalomi. So he is one of the Rebbes. He's now deceased, of Jewish renewal, that mystical Judaism.
Mhm.
And I think he was sitting in the tree outside my window. And I was like, okay, well, that's weird enough to know I'm dreaming. And then I go
There's a
out,
Rebbe in the tree, yeah.
Ribby in the tree. and I go through my window, and I decided to fly, because to me, that's like that's the pinnacle of things in my physical body that I could think to do. And so then I decided I would fly. And I've had other flying dreams too that I do believe were lucid. And what happens when I'm flying, and do I want to land here or not? So I again, making many decisions about my situation.
Yeah, I think the flying thing is definitely often one of the things that people try first when they're
Yes,
dreaming. And when you realize they're dreaming, it's like, oh, wow, wait, I can control this. I'm going to fly. You know,
exactly.
it's a great
Exactly.
dream of humanity to be able to fly like a bird. But
Yes.
to touch on that dream, the funny thing that popped into my head, do you remember the series? The hell was that show with the that was it took place in Alaska.
Oh,
What is it called?
um, Northern Exposure.
Yes, yep. And there's the character who's native and
Yes,
uh
the woman.
no, the boy, the young man
Oh, okay.
who at some point he randomly starts waking up, finding himself in trees,
Really?
like out of the blue. Like all of a sudden this starts happening where he like, goes to bed normally and he wakes up and he's like up in a tree. And it's like,
Wow.
what am I doing in the tree?
And how
And
did I get here?
yeah, and it's actually I think he is like in a coming of age point in his life, and it's one of the traits of a shaman. So
Oh,
he gets taken under the wing of somebody else in the tribe who understands,
wow.
starts to train him. But
What
that's
a
his beginning,
rich,
like this random
yeah,
finding himself up in a tree.
that's such a rich culture,
Yeah,
that I've often wished that people in our culture would see things like mental illness as shamanic. It's not something to fear, and it's not something to drug a person out of. But perhaps if we had a different culture, not like ours, it would be more like would be known to be more special, and then someone would take the person under their wing.
yeah. I think I read a book about consciousness, and there was a whole article talking about exactly that, saying that Western culture lost its context for people with, this, I guess you could call it a, alternate way of perceiving, or
Yes.
trying to remember what the other term is for this, where, well, I mean, they're not neurotypical. So we don't have a
Right.
place for them in our society. And we've kind of canceled them,
Yeah, we
out
kind of
of our mainstream society. And where
lock
is the
them
place
up.
that Yeah, but
and
other
medicate.
cultures that have the tradition
Yes.
recognize that this is something special, and then
Yes.
it's a gift, and it doesn't have to be maladaptive, where we've
Right.
like thrown it into this whole other category, and because of that, those people end up having a very difficult time. And
Yes.
not simply because they're judged that way, but there's really no context for what's going on with them. Even we don't
Right.
know even how to deal with it. It's like so
Right.
strange to us.
Yes. Yes. Our culture is so disconnected with nature and with, what did you say? You just said, well,
Yeah,
atypical thinking. I think that this culture wants to medicate, you know, and a different culture would be more adept at dealing with people who are atypical thinkers.
yeah. I mean, and you get shades of that in the stories about people like Joan of Arc, because
Okay.
she, you know, to an extent, they had a context for her because they refer to her as a saint now,
Right.
but initially people were like, this is blasphemy, you can't be
Right.
seeing this, but she was having visions and speaking directly to God.
Wow.
That was,
Yeah.
and
It's
the
a good
fact,
audience to have.
if if she hadn't been a woman, things might have been very different for her, and
Yes.
she
Oh, yes.
probably would not have been burnt at the stake. She would have been
Right. Right.
automatically, declared a hero because of what she did on the battlefield. But,
Yes.
because she was a woman,
I
it
also
was,
wonder they wouldn't have necessarily sainted a man who had the same proclivity to fight.
oh no, I think they would have. I think they would have been
Okay.
more likely to saint a man.
Really?
Uh,
Okay.
yeah, and most of the saints in the Catholic saint pantheon are all men who either had visions or martyred themselves or did something,
Okay. Okay.
to prove their, connection to God.
Yes.
It's usually through some type of trial and hardship. In a sense, she was martyred because of her beliefs, you
Yes.
know, but by the people who ran the church.
Oh,
Rather than
them.
oppressive, it wasn't
Yes.
like a Romans killing her. It was
Yes.
the hierarchy of the church at the time
Yes.
that decided to declare her a witch and burn her at the stake.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah. But the tree sitting thing, I just wanted to go back to that because
Yes.
the trees, um, that type of symbol of being up in the tree, it's
Yes.
about shamanic cultures. Like
Wow.
the whole pole thing is turns up in other cultures that are referred to as shamanic, as being like
Yes.
sort of like the world tree or the center tree. That's how the shaman traverses between the underworld and the upper world and can act as a psychopomp and go between
Yes.
the heavens where the gods live and the hells where whatever
Wow.
forces are down there live.
Yes. So interesting.
It's interesting to have a Rebbe,
I
playing
know.
that.
I know.
That just, I mean, strikes me as a Mel Brooks thing right there. Like,
Yes, totally.
he always has these jokes with,
the
some
the
rabbi with the whole
with the
get up,
payout. Yes. Yeah, Mel Brooks is
some Hasidic guy up in the tree going, "Oi,
yeah. Oi. I need some
what
chicken
is this
soup.
that we are doing here?"
Right. Really so interesting. Well, Brendan, I feel like you were telling me a dream that was repetitive that you shared in Dr. Larson's dream group. Did you finish that, or I think you just introduced
Yeah,
it?
I mean, there wasn't a lot more in detail that I can remember, but there was not only was there this whole thing about the true fairy cross, but there was
Oh,
also
yes, yes, yes.
something about true silver,
Okay.
which I guess the idea of silver, has some layered meanings for me.
Yes,
Tolkien's mythology has mithril, which is a
yes.
silver alloy that is like
Oh,
stronger than steel.
is that
Um,
the elves, remember they had
Yeah, the
swords
dwarves
made
mine it.
by, yes,
The dwarves mine it, and
okay,
the elves use the material to make these incredibly,
yes,
powerful weapons. And I think that that was the type of sword I was given in that dream,
wow,
this mithril sword, or something like that. Um,
yes,
and there's another part of that. There's a book called Fantastes by an author named George McDonald, who was writing in the 19th century. He was actually a Protestant priest, but he wrote these like wild, fantastical novels, which are
hmm.
very dreamlike. And there's an excerpt in that, and the whole dream was about fairyland. And he talks about how the world of Faerie, is interwoven in our world and runs through our physical world like veins of silver through rock.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and just the symbolism of that just like was very layered. And I know I've tried to re-enter that dream a few times
Yes.
because I don't think I ever got to start actually going on and completing the quest. So it
Okay.
feels like it's undone to me.
It's
Like,
undone. It feels that way to me as well.
yeah,
So, well, that will be fascinating to see if at some point in the dream world you revisit that
yeah, it
scenario.
would be. Tonight would be
Yeah.
a great night. It's
Yes, it would.
there's a solar eclipse actually happening right now.
In down under.
No, and well, I don't know if it's visible from the Eastern Hemisphere, but
Okay.
astrologically, this is the solar eclipse. Well, this is the eclipse time of year. 2 weeks ago, we had a lunar eclipse,
Wow.
partially where from the Eastern Hemisphere, the moon had a shadow going across it.
Wow.
Now here we are 14 days later, it's
Yes.
new moon, and the
Mm-hmm.
moon's on the opposite side. So it's
Oh, wow.
actually occluding the sun,
Yes.
from the perspective of the earth. And
Yes.
it's very powerful, like symbolically.
It's
Yeah.
really so interesting that when there is a lunar eclipse, there also will be a solar eclipse in proximity. So that's
But 14
fascinating to me.
days, it's like exactly 14 days because
Wow.
you get the full moon, and then 14 days later,
New
everything
moon.
has moved.
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah, and you go from
Wow.
full moon to a new moon. Solar
Yes.
eclipses always happen on new moon.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
new moons are always a time for, it's symbolic of a beginning,
Okay.
but
Yes.
it's also the darkest point of the lunar cycle.
Yes.
So it's both a
Yes.
beginning and the end.
In Judaism, the women often have a woman circle at the new moon. And I don't know what the connection is with the religion, but I've always known that women are gathering at the new moon.
That's
So
interesting.
yeah, I'll try to find out more about that.
Yeah, I know that there's been a number of writers who have indicated that there was a stronger feminine component to early forms of Judaism that somehow, you know, was largely historically erased, but there's
Yes,
traces of it in some of the
yes,
traditions, and that would probably be one that they would look at to indicate that the
wow,
whole idea of the Shekinah,
yes,
itself being a very important part of that.
yes. And Jewish holidays always follow the moons.
Yeah, it's a lunar calendar.
Yes.
Robert Graves, makes a big deal about that when
Oh
he
yeah.
talks about like, I mean, and his work is, a lot of people debunk it as being, oh, it's not, anthropologically or archaeologically sound and blah blah blah.
Huh. But he
It's
wrote,
largely poetic.
what did he
And
write? He wrote uh
oh, he
The
wrote
White
I
Witch,
Claudius, the White Goddess.
the White Goddess. Yes.
Yeah, that's the work that people attack the most. But he wrote tons on Greek mythology.
Yes.
He wrote I Claudius, which some of you might know from PBS,
Okay.
years ago, but about the Emperor Claudius, who was the uh, I don't even know what he wasn't exactly disabled, but he had a speech impediment. So
Okay.
he was considered foolish by a
They
lot
say
of
that
people.
about Moses, that Moses also had a speech impediment.
That's interesting.
And that's why when God gives the 10 commandments, well, this is Mel Brooks, right? I have 15. Whoops, one drops 10 commandments.
Yeah, that's a great gag.
So, but the story goes, and this would be like midrash about the Hebrew way of looking at it, that he has a stutter, and that's why. And he says, "How can I share with the people? How can I talk to the people?" And then God gives him permission to do his healing wonders with his brother Aaron. So, because Aaron doesn't have a stutter, so that's very interesting.
So what happens to the brother?
Aaron is the high priest, and
What?
he's a high priest,
Okay.
and I don't think anything happens to him. You know, he's a communicator. But one of his sons, oh, what are the names? Zephyr and Ephraim, something like that. One of his sons does die because he did something against what he was told to do. I think he enters the Holy of Holies, and only the high priest is supposed to do that.
So he
So,
breaks the law.
and he
basically.
dies. Yes.
Huh.
Yeah.
Kind of like what happens in the end of that Indiana Jones film.
Oh, when the melting faces,
Yeah.
the melting Nazi faces. Yeah, it's a great film. I have my Indiana Jones hat, but I'm not wearing it at present, obviously. But I bought it at Kenco maybe 20 somewhat years ago. And it's still, I love it. I feel like everyone should have an indie hat. Yeah.
Yeah. Time to put on the indie hat.
I know.
Go do your
I
thing.
have exploring to do. Yes. So it's so interesting, Brendan. And I am sorry to cut it shorter, but I've been asked by listeners to keep them a little under an hour, or like a half
Okay.
hour, preferably. So, but I love talking to you, Brendan. You're very wise. You're a wise one.
I'm a
You're
wise guy.
you're a wise man, wise guy. You're also that. But I really enjoy talking with you about many
Always
things.
fun to have, people to talk to about this stuff with.
Yes. Yeah, so let's do this again quite soon. You know,
Yeah.
think of themes that you might want to explore.
I got to start writing down some of my
Yes,
dreams because
yes, you do.
there's been a reoccurring theme lately of encountering people from my past. So
Okay, interesting.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, please, if you have any more of those dreams, please do write it down. I'd love to explore that with you.
yeah, that'd be great.
Cool. All right, Brendan. Once again,
Great,
thank you.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, we say sweet dreams. Holomod metukim. Ciao.
Ciao.
Oh, golly.